It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, October 2nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is wondering what the team level questions we still have for the rest of training camp.
We do still have questions.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You could find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We as a show are on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter at Locked On Flyers as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to get into those questions that we have now that the preseason is close to wrapping up here. You know, what the team looks like, not necessarily just individual players, but we had sort of what is essentially the last preseason game already in the books against the Bruins last night, which they lost 4-1, but 2 empty net goals. So you got to give it a little grain of salt there in terms of the final score. I think one of the things that was interesting here is that this is the second game in a row where the Flyers have iced guys that were already sent down to the Phantoms. So what do you think is the reasoning behind doing this?
I just think there's certain guys they don't want to play more than, 3 games, let's say. So they're doing that. I don't think it affected their play too much. I think their main guys, the Bruins' main guys, were the ones we could watch and identify and see. And, the one thing I felt was probably midway second through most of the third, aside from just, some good comeback tries from the Flyers, mostly carried by the Bruins. And that was the thing. You could see that the Bruins defense, like they were able, yes, we'll talk about Michkov's assist and that was a nice play and connect these goals. But for the most part, for that last part of the game after that, they were pretty much able to bottleneck that line. And that made a difference to the Flyers offense, because this is where, like in the regular season, they need some of these other guys to really step up. And like Brink did not step up, as an example. So like the offense that they're going to look for in other places, they're not getting it.
Yeah, I think that was really important because you did have a pretty complete Flyers lineup to a certain extent.
Right.
Like he only sat the guys who played against the Islanders. The only person who played back to back was Richard.
Right.
And I think, that was more to give Richard a chance to show what he could do for another game and see what he looks like back to back, to be honest, because you have those kinds of games during the regular season. You want to see how he handles it, especially if you're seriously considering him. But I think, it was a tough game for the Flyers. I think that, the second period was their best period for sure, and the numbers bear that out. You look at scoring chances, hugely lopsided in the first and third period to the Bruins. It was pretty even in the second period. The Flyers had like a slight edge.
I don't know what it was. Last 3-4 minutes I felt weren't great, but maybe the numbers, maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. But, overall that period was a lot better for the Flyers, and you noticed it. I think that, one of the things that we've harped on in terms of what they were missing last season and what they needed to show, getting chances up front. They still weren't really doing that. Like the shots that they were taking were a little farther afield. Now, the one goal they did get was sort of up front because of just the nature of the play and, Michkov's feed to Konechny. But it wasn't like a garbage goal. There was only really
No.
1 or 2 chances the Flyers had that it would have been considered a garbage goal. There was one with Sanheim streaking up front and Denoyer trying to
Right.
punch it in.
Yeah, Denoyer
And
really needed to get that goal because he was right on the doorstep, unencumbered. And he couldn't do it.
right, and so they just need to take more chances like that and have more opportunities
Or
like
get
that.
them. I don't
Now
know if it's a matter of
right.
taking the chances. They just at times weren't getting them.
Right. Well, that was the other thing. It's like the Bruins were doing a really good job of preventing it in the
They were.
first place. So I think that with everything going on with the Bruins, they still look pretty good out there from the
Yeah.
skating perspective.
They have 5 or 6 guys that could really still affect the game, but they do. And McAvoy means everything. Like you could look at
Yeah.
the Flyers
He
defense.
was really good.
Yeah, you could look at the Flyers defense and you could like some of their defensemen, and none of them are Charlie McAvoy. That's just the way it is. It's just, and you could see it in this game.
Yeah. And so I think that, the Flyers have to find ways to get more quality shots and get
Yes.
more high opportunity, high danger chances here. And you got to get closer to the net and you have to be
Yeah.
able to accomplish that. Now, is the team trying to do that to some degree with speed? Maybe.
Yeah, a
Is
little
it
bit.
working?
Trying to catch
Depends.
him. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think with speed, they got a couple of chances. Richard had a chance. I mean,
Mhm.
but if you don't bury them, then it's kind of like we forget about it almost. It's like, yeah, it was a good try, but they didn't have anything really, just the one play that looked like, hey, that was a terrific play against a hard team. But they didn't have a lot of those or enough of those. Even ones that missed, they didn't have enough of those.
Right. And another thing that we've kind of talked about as far as the team play and the strategy there is like hits and block shots, that those are
Right.
a little bit down from where
Yeah.
they were when this was just a pure shot blocking team, right? Well, Flyers had 18 block shots in this game compared to the Bruins 10.
Yeah. They definitely
And
were blocking a few more. You could see it.
yeah, you had a couple of times where Tyson Forster got stung, Nick Seeler got stung.
Yeah.
So
Sealer, rather, definitely. Oof. Yeah.
yeah, so I think, that's the risk you take when you have that kind of strategy, and there's a balance there, but you have to have the skill. If you wanna balance it out a little more, you have to have the offensive skill and the defensive skill with very clean breakouts to avoid doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think this was one of those games where, like, if Torts tells a young guy like Richard, "Hey, just don't worry about turnovers, just play," and maybe he said the same thing to Luchanko, you know that it's preseason because he would never say that to any player otherwise, no matter who they are, never, ever, ever. So
Which he said he did.
I
So
know.
I was genuinely
Me
surprised by
too.
that.
But that does show the difference, right? Like,
Mhm.
he knew he was in a game, he wanted to win, but he also knew that he was still evaluating. He made a few grimaces for sure. But yeah, I think he saw everything he wanted to see? No, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I did take note of that,
Yeah.
those kind of things that they had relied more heavily on in the past. They they were kind of looking to that again, and I think it's also the nature of playing the Bruins and
Yes.
against that style of play, right?
Yeah, there's no question. They have that style. Look, it's hard to kill the Bruins. They're like a vampire. It's like
I
that's just
know,
the way
right?
they are, man.
Yeah, tough going there. I think that, the Flyers had a little bit of trouble with the giveaways there, but Boston, had some trouble with it too.
They
It
did.
wasn't really a one-sided thing. I think that, it's just that the Flyers weren't really initiating plays to create takeaways. It was more like unforced errors on
Right.
Boston's
That's a good
part.
point. It was. And yeah, you get some of that. Like I said, I thought Michkov was okay. He didn't shoot enough
Mhm.
again. I think this is a thing that really is going to take time for him to really,
Yeah.
because, again, like if we break down the last game, yes, 3-on-3, he's going to have more opportunities to shoot, obviously. And yeah, maybe when they put him on the left side, maybe that gave him an extra opportunity to shoot that he wouldn't have had. But he is going to have to really work on the shooting. Now his playmaking is terrific. So I mean, there's nothing
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong there. And I saw that he had a takeaway and no giveaways, which was an improvement from last game where he had 4 giveaways. So, he did improve on that against a pretty good team. So that's a plus. Could they have solved Bucci? Like, he's not a great goalie. Like, we have to just say I don't even know if he's backup quality. He's only played 3 NHL games, and they couldn't really solve him.
Yeah, I think, the Flyers didn't really get a ton of chances across the board
Yeah.
in terms of high volume. I think, Konechny had 4 scoring chances there, but it only resulted in technically 1 shot on goal.
Right.
So even if you're looking at it from a scoring chance perspective, it wasn't like huge there. Michkov, had like 2 scoring chances, I think. Denoye actually had 3 scoring chances.
He did,
So
but he needed to bury something. Like, it's
yeah,
unfortunate. Like, he needed to bury something, and I feel like Richard needed to bury something because there is something there. But if you can't bury it, it's going to be hard to get the ice time. I still think, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I think it's still Brink versus Lixell. And I like Lixell better right now, this moment in the season. Brink just is missing something.
yeah, I think it was a tough game for him for sure. We're going to talk more about individual players and goaltending, but also talk about the team level questions that we have before we get to your mailbag questions in the third segment. We are going to do that coming up next. Some of the best concerts of the year take place in the fall, and it's my favorite time to head to a show. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite part of the Gametime app is that it's great for getting notified about those super deals so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Best of all, they have all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout when you activate that feature, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through email. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. On tomorrow's show, we are going to kind of look around the division and see how things are coming out in the wash as we approach the end of the preseason here, and have anything changed since we started training camp, that can make us change our minds about what's going on in the Metro. We're going to preview Flyers versus Devils, albeit it's almost a meaningless game unless
Not
there's some
much of a
fun.
game there.
Not much of a game there. So I think that we're kind of where we are in terms of the information that we need going into final roster predictions, which we're going to do on the Friday show heading into the Monday deadline. So I do want to talk about Sam Ersson in net because I thought he had a real solid game. Faced 18 shots on goal in the first and only let 1 in. So I was just really impressed with his ability to just stay focused amongst all that action.
Yeah, he was good. I thought maybe he let up 1 or 2 rebounds that you wouldn't like, but I think he was good. He does need a structured D in front of him, and that D started to
Mhm.
break down on him in the third period. So, I didn't really put anything on him for that. Uh, yeah, I thought he played well.
I do too. Now, John Tortorella was asked about Alexei Kolosov in earlier in the day, and he said he wasn't concerned with that or not focused on it. And to me, I think while that very well may be true and may be the best way to approach dealing with knowing that Urson and Fedotov is your tandem, I just wonder what kind of message that sends to Kolosov and in terms of what conversations are happening in the background. And I don't know what those are and what the end game is here, but that was of concern to me.
I don't think there's an end game. I think it's a clue that they're not going to carry 3 goalies. So if they're not going to carry 3 goalies, he doesn't care about that guy right now. That's all. I think
Right.
it's just like that, and that keeps him out of having to talk about him, and that's where he wants to be right now, and that's fine. He could put blinders onto it right now. If there's an injury, he may not be able to put blinders on it, especially if he's here and playing well. But he probably wants to make sure he's here first before he even talks about him, and I think that's kind of like where he's at.
You talked before we started recording about Luchanko and Bonk that they'll probably get in that game on Thursday, and that'll be that.
Yeah.
But I do think that, what Tortorella had to say about both of them and their games was essentially spot on. That Luchanko looks really good and he sees the game in a much more mature way than his age is, but that he just isn't ready.
Right. He's just the strength isn't quite there. Um, I think when the game is on the line, that play isn't quite there. I think one of the things, like, if John's looking for like elite decision makers, I think he could be that.
Mhm.
But he's not that
And I
now.
think you're right, and I think Torts thinks that will happen.
Yes.
It's just not there now.
But I
And
don't think the
I
Flyers, I will say, other than Luchanko and Bonk, I don't think the Flyers are necessarily drafting elite decision makers. So I kind of wonder, like, if John's going to still be here. I don't know if he'll be here beyond this contract, or if they're going to continue the Torts way. They may have to pick up a few more guys like that.
Yeah, and I think he feels that way about Bonk now, that just Bonk doesn't
Yes.
have the speed, to manage his game, right?
Yes.
That it's just one of those things. I think that he sees the talent in Bonk and that he's just not ready yet, and that's okay. He's a young defenseman, and as you talk about, Russ, defensemen take much longer to develop.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, you could just, you know, Beecher isn't the most fleet of foot. He's not bad, but he's not super fast. And he got right past Bonk. And that's just, he knew how to do it. Bonk couldn't, and in the end, Bonk got a stick in there. So good for him. But, that first step, Beecher had him. And so, like, it's
Right.
those kinds of things. He's just not ready for that yet.
Yep. So then the question becomes, are they going to make more cuts before Thursday, or are we just riding it out and then when
No,
the
I think they're
roster's
riding it
review?
out. I mean, they might make one cut. Gaucher played 8 minutes or something. Maybe they'll cut him, but they might make a couple of quickies, but they'll wait until the end. But I don't think Luchanko or Bonk will, play any regular season games. I don't think it's going to happen.
Then as far as like the other bigger picture things that you have to work on during the preseason, it's not just about player evaluation. I think obviously number one on our list is the power play.
Yeah.
And Tort said they're going to be spending kind of the rest of camp working on situational play and
Well,
the
6
little
on 5
things.
is another one. Like after the power
Yeah.
play, 6 on
Yeah.
5. Sometimes when you watch it, it's like they're doing it for the first time. Like it drives me crazy. The first time that you get the 6 on 5 is almost when you should have your best chances. And they couldn't get it together. Now they did win some faceoffs, so I give them credit for that.
Mhm.
But eventually they could not hold the puck, and that was a problem.
Well, faceoffs are the next thing on my list because
Right.
they got real beat on faceoffs in this game. Everybody looked bad.
Yeah.
Couture looked bad. Frost looked bad. Like everybody looked
Yeah.
bad in this
Couturier
game.
did have that one nice shot on goal, so we got to give him credit for that.
I thought Couture had some really good
He
moments.
had a
At
good
the
game.
dot was really not one of them.
No, he had a
So
pretty good game though. He did.
yeah, I think so.
But yeah, because I think in a game like that against the Bruins, a smart player like Couturier is not going to ever hurt you. I think that's what it
Right.
boils. He may not be an offensive factor, but he's never going to hurt you.
Yeah, I just think that again, they've got to work on faceoffs and figure out a way to win more of them, especially in key situations and when they're down a
Well,
man
if you
or
think
when they're
about it,
up like when they're in a 6 on
yes.
5 situation like
Well, if
that.
you think about it, if they're going to play games tight like this, and these three things are key because a power play could win you the game when it's tight like this. A good 6 on 5 could at least tie the game for you when you're like this. And the faceoffs. I mean, they did do well with the 6 on 5 faceoffs, but not the rest of the game.
Right.
That could do it too. So, and that was the other thing. The Bruins were able to set up at least one or two set plays by winning faceoffs.
So I think, another big question out there that Torts was asked earlier in the day yesterday, is where is this team? And is there an expectation of making the playoffs this year? And he said, absolutely not. It's not the right way to approach it. This team is still building. You can't get ahead of yourselves. And there's still too many questions. And I think it's worth having a conversation about that, because I think that in some ways he's right. And in some ways, part of building is making progress, right?
Well, that's the thing. So it's going to be hard to chart progress if they have a worse record than last year, right? Like, I
Yeah.
get that. But I guess if you break down certain areas, if certain areas are better and you're losing just a lot of one goal games or whatever, maybe that's how you could chart progress and still have a worse record. But I think he's playing it right otherwise. I actually think last year, uh, even though he wouldn't talk about playoffs, he probably felt like he had a better chance at the playoffs. But he also had Carter Hart, and he also said that the goaltending tandem scares the what out of him right now, and I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is the big question, and it's completely fair. I mean,
Yes,
it is an untested goalie tandem, even
yes,
though we have confidence in Urson, and we just talked
yeah,
about
no
how he had a
question.
great game.
Yeah,
Fedotov is largely untested, and we
yeah,
don't know what, like we've seen when Urson gets overplayed, it's a problem.
right.
So I think that it is a really good question he has. I think that in some ways, there's no harm in setting a goal for the playoffs, and maybe you don't have to talk about it, and that's fine.
Correct. You just do it in the room, keep it in the
You
room.
do it in the room, keep it in the room, and I think that's fine. I think that this is still part of this rebuild, but I think that you do have to figure out ways to measure success is really
You do, and I think by the Flyers being scrappy and everything last year, that helped them early on in the season. But now with the way the NHL is and getting bigger again, every team is like that now.
yeah.
So it's like that they have to battle through that too.
Well, those are a lot of questions. Y'all have a lot of questions too, and we will get to those coming up next.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you could check your latest stats, view play-by-play, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I would say take the Minnesota Vikings over the Jets in London. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com.
Digging into your mailbag questions as well as some of the YouTube comments that had some questions in it. I think, for the first one here, this is in relation to the John Tortorella iPad discussion
Yeah.
we had. BlackRock's 8413 said, I agree with no iPads in the regular season. And yes, the preseason is okay for teaching because that's what the preseason is for. Keep iPads off the bench, reviews later.
Okay, but every other team in the league is going to use them but you. Doesn't that put you at a disadvantage? I believe it does.
I think so, because I think you can learn on the spot. And especially
Absolutely.
if you're playing a particular team and you see a trend
Yeah,
in
you could say,
terms
"Look,
of
look,
a
look at this.
pattern
You
here,
go backdoor on this. There's a play here. Let's try
yeah,
it."
because you can identify those patterns and find
Yes.
a way around the strategies of the other team.
Right.
I think, do you wait to use it until the period breaks? I mean, is that okay? Maybe, as
No, but
long as they're
sometimes when
doing
it's
that.
hot on the bench, the guys
Yeah.
can literally find something like the veterans like Konechny pointed out and say, "Let's do this next shift." How do you do that now? I mean, you could talk to the other guy, but unless they remember exactly what's going on the ice, you could stop everything and show somebody. It's an effective tool. It really is.
And I think it enhances the creativity of the players because
It
they get
does.
to use that creativity on the spot
Yeah.
a little bit more. Kolchak357 commented, Jett Luchanko is much further along than I assumed he would be. I don't think they'll rush him along, though. Next year just feels right for him.
We'll see. I'm not ready to say that yet. I want to see how his season goes. There's a lot of time left, but yeah, is he on a good path? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, you don't want to put any timer on a guy's development like that, but I think that this year is not the year. Next year could be the year. but we'll see how this upcoming season goes for him.
Right. Yeah, I think what's good is, you're allowed to feel good about him because he's shown very well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, are happier now with the pick than they were at the time of the draft. And I was happy with him at the
Right.
time of the draft. It's
Right.
just increased,
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's good.
Yep. Yep. John White said, good game by Michkov, Frost, and Luchanko. That was like the last game that those guys played
Yes.
in. Urson
Yes.
was terrific. Andre was getting pushed around. Tippett still has his high and wide shooting disease. Can they please hire a shot accuracy coach to mentor him?
I mean, I don't know. I could scream it from the rooftops. I can get a megaphone. I maybe, I should buy an ad on the Parkway on 76 and say that, and maybe when the guys are like driving in, they'll see it. Somebody will see it, because I agree.
Yeah, projected on the wall of the training center.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. Yes, I'll buy the ad space at the training center.
You don't even have to buy it. You just get a projector.
I just got.
Put
They're
it
going to
up on
kick
the
me out.
wall.
They're going to kick me out, Rachel. I can't do that. I could buy it though.
Yeah. Buy a banner
Yeah.
on top of the ring. I pulled this comment out because it's something we said about 11,000 times last season. And I think, you kind of joke about it with Tippett, but at some point you're like, no, we're serious.
Yeah,
here.
because it's like it would really make a difference. Like he could be that guy, but he just needs some help.
He really does. I think, it's an important part too, especially if he's going to be on a line with Michkov, and Michkov is the playmaker. Tippett has to finish.
Right.
Like that's how it
No
has to
question
work
about
in
it.
order
Yeah.
to be successful.
Like I said, Claude Giroux went for help and he started scoring more goals. And you remember he was under pressure to score more goals. He did it. He could do it too.
Yeah. Anthony wants to know how much of an impact will a healthy Ristolainen have on the team this year?
Big, because it pushes everybody else up. He can, he could be the best guy in the third pairing to start. Physical, presence. I don't know how much offense they should really expect from him, honestly, but he's a good passer and he can move the puck and he skates well. So it's big. It keeps Eric Johnson out of the lineup. No offense to Eric Johnson.
Well, and I think it makes Zamula a better player.
And that
I
too.
think that
Absolutely.
Risto is absolutely the kind of guy that's going to push Zamula
Yes.
to go kind of beyond his comfort zone a little bit. And we've said nothing but good things about Zamula and his progress over the last year.
It's hard
and
to
he's
find bad things in his game, honestly.
Right. But so then let's take it up a notch a little. And I think Risto is the veteran kind of leader and a more calming defensive presence. So if Zamula wants to take some chances,
Yeah.
Risto will give him the space to be able to do that.
Yeah, I like that.
So I am very pleased with that. The last, it's not a question here, but I just pulled it out because it was related to Russ's nemesis of the week here, because I was kind of giving him some crap for complaining about washer fluid prices. So we had a comment saying, Jesus, Russ, just put water in your washer reservoir.
But you can't, because you'll forget about it. You'll forget about it, and that first frost day will come, and it'll freeze in the line, and sometimes you have to then get it unclogged, and it costs a lot.
Well, that's the thing, is like one of our other listeners commented and came to your rescue.
Oh, there you go.
Front.
Thank you.
David Wrigley said it could freeze, so you don't want to do that.
Right.
And I just appreciated that entire exchange.
That's awesome. See, we created a conversation.
Yes. Oh my God, Russ, don't complain about washer fluid. There's so many bigger issues on this planet.
I mean, it's not a political issue. I'll say that.
That's for sure. Oh my God, dynamic pricing on washer fluid. Anyway, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk what we can accomplish in this Devils last preseason game, given that we know we're not facing any top guys at all. And, they're generally not going to play the NHL guys on the Flyers side either. So what are we doing here? Plus all the latest from training camp. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got questions you want us to answer, like we just did, let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On NHL, where local experts keep you updated daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the season. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.